بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أهلا وسهلا مرحبا جميعا وبكم إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيكم. Welcome to today's class. We'll be continuing inshallah ta'ala revising units 1 to 4. So this is the second session of this revision week. And then after that, you will have some time to revise, and then you can attempt the exam. Then inshallah after the exam, we'll do the exam, if you like, review session, and then we'll continue inshallah with unit 5. So next week is going to be a revision week, if you like, or exam week. So there are no lessons normally, not exam week. So Saturday there's no lesson, and Monday there's no lesson. Next lesson is going to be the Saturday after that, inshallah ta'ala, during which we'll review the exam and also start with unit 5. So just keep that in mind, inshallah ta'ala. Obviously today we'll continue revising a bit more. We'll do some quizzes and exercises, maybe some grammar competition as well. Obviously at your disposal to answer any questions that you might have, things that are not clear. Bismillah, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I was connected to the wrong microphone. Did everybody hear what I said, or need to mention that all over again? Okay, so what I said was Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ahlan wa sahlan, marhaban. Welcome everyone. Sorry for the mic. I was on the wrong mic. Connect to the headphones. I was saying that this week, Alhamdulillah, we're going to continue with our second session of revision, and on next week is going to be revision week, exam week. So we normally don't do lessons in that week. So Saturday and Monday, there are no lessons. It's just there for you to revise and to do the exam, and also to have a break. Obviously, we've been studying, Alhamdulillah, 4 weeks straight. So it's good to have 1 week break just to rejuvenate, inshallah ta'ala, and gain your strength, and also to fill in the gaps. So apart from revising for the exam, attempting the exam, it's also an opportunity for you to make up for any missed assignments. So of course, the course director, Mahad, has been reaching out to those of you that are falling behind regarding the assignments. Alhamdulillah, the response has been very positive so far. Students have been benefiting a lot from those reminders. So if he has reached out to you again, then please do complete those assignments. If he hasn't reached out to you, then Alhamdulillah, that means things are going good for you. So keep it up and try to complete all the assignments, inshallah ta'ala, during the coming week, inshallah, so that we can have a fresh new start after the holiday, inshallah ta'ala. I know as time goes on, the weeks pile up, things come up, you fall a bit behind, you miss a few assignments here and there, but that's what this week is for, inshallah. It's a week to catch up. Right. All right. So last lesson, we talked about grammar, and I explained it in detail. And I was going to share the grammar notes section. I don't even know why I haven't. I'll actually do that right now, so that we don't leave anything for later. So we covered all of this, explained all of this. And today, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to talk about vocabulary. We're going to talk about what? Vocabulary. Now, when it comes to vocabulary, obviously, you must be thinking to yourself that what is there to revise when it comes to vocabulary? It's surely just upon me to put in the work and to memorize the flashcards and the like. That's true. That's actually very true. Vocab is one of those things that they say you can take a horse to drink, but you can't make it drink. It's one of those things that it's on you. I can't really help you with that much. You just have to go through the flashcards and put the work in. But I won't be talking about that today. Today we're going to be talking about how to learn and study, or how to approach vocabulary, or vocabulary acquisition, what's called. How do we approach vocabulary acquisition? So here's a link to the notes, by the way. Like I said before, I forget. That's the link to last lesson's notes. And when we're done with today's lesson, I'll send a link for today's notes as well. So what I'm trying to say when it comes to vocabulary is that how do you approach learning vocabulary? That's something that is worth learning. Okay. There's more to vocabulary than just reading a flashcard with English on one side and Arabic on the other side. As a matter of fact, that's probably the worst way to learn vocabulary. Okay? Because it's best to learn vocabulary in the language itself. Because that way, number one, you are making the connection between that word and its meaning, as opposed to connecting the Arabic word to the English translation, which you then connect to the meaning, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like an extra step in your thinking process. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have, what example can I give you? I always like to use qalam and kitab. All right. Let's say qalam. Okay. Now, qalam has a meaning. Is this thing that we use to write. But if you learn qalam solely through vocabulary flashcards with English, then you are going to make the connection between qalam and pen. And then pen is the thing that you think of when you think of the thing or that tool you use to write. Okay? So you have not established the connection between pen and that tool that we use to write. Rather, you're establishing the connection between qalam, sorry. You haven't established the connection between qalam and the tool that we write. We write with. You've established the connection rather between qalam and pen. And then pen to the meaning. So ideally you shouldn't learn Arabic vocabulary through translations. Now you might say, Ustad, that's exactly what we're doing. On the Quizlet flashcards that you've given us in English, isn't it that you're giving us an Arabic word with English on the other side? Or you're contradicting yourself. Not really. We're doing that out of necessity. We're doing that out of necessity because in order to learn Arabic through Arabic, there's a certain critical mass that you have to reach, certain level that you have to reach. Because if you say to me, what's qalam, and I try to explain it to you in Arabic, and I say to you, qalam adatun lil kitaba, you're going to say, what's adat, what's kitaba? Okay, so it's not going to work that way. But having said that, there are still ways in which you can practice vocabulary without relying on the English translation. So that's what we're going to talk about today, inshallah. And this is what we are going to implement, inshallah, when it comes to the vocabulary. Maybe not right now, because the vocabulary bank that you have, it's still too little in order to learn Arabic through Arabic. But this is something to look forward to, and we'll try our best to do it with what we have so far, but it's going to be very limited. So let me give you an example. First thing, and this is really important because when it comes to vocabulary, and we're going to talk about this first before we talk about the other categories, yes, or the other ways to learn. First, I'm going to give you the theory. I'll explain everything, and then later we'll talk about how you can take this information in order to learn Arabic vocabulary through Arabic. So when it comes to vocabulary, we can categorize vocab. Arabic vocab, we can categorize it into different categories. And the reason why we would categorize them into different categories is because words that belong to the same categories have similar attributes. They have similar features. Okay? So just knowing which category a word belongs to, you automatically know, yes, what the attributes of that word are. Okay, so when it comes to learning vocabulary, you shouldn't just learn vocabulary as just random words. Rather, you should learn them as part of a category. Okay, Now, these categories, or these, it's all about links, really. I mean, our brain is a linking machine. It makes links. That's how we learn things, okay? So it's all about what links do we want to make. So these categories, we can put them into two different groups. We have grammatical categories and we have semantical categories. So grammatical categories are categories related to grammar. Semantical categories are categories related to the meaning of the word, the actual meaning. Okay, so let's start with the semantical categories. So when it comes to semantical categories, we have, obviously, goes back to the 3 categories of speech that we talked about. We have nouns, we have verbs, we have function words, which we would also call sometimes particles, but I decided to call them function words instead. Function words is a bit more general than particles. Even some nouns are also function words. Then we have expressions and other things that might not fit in there. Okay? You already know this. You're like, Ustad, I already know this. Shukran, jazilan. Okay? So, okay, I get your point, Ustad. When I come across a noun, I'll remember it as a noun and not as a verb, because nouns have different features, different attributes. A noun has number. It can be singular, dual, plural, whereas a verb can't. A noun is not connected to time. A noun can be masculine or feminine. A verb can't. Whereas verbs are connected to tense. Okay, Jazakallah khair, Ustad, for mentioning that. When I come across a verb, I'll ask myself the question, is it Madi, Mudari, Amr? And I'll look at it that way. That's great. But that's not all. Even nouns themselves are different categories. Okay? What are these categories? Nouns, first we have something called proper nouns. Okay? Proper nouns and common nouns, the two opposites. Okay? And these are different things. So proper nouns are names of entities, concrete entities, okay? Or abstract entities. What do you mean by that? Concrete entities basically are, I think, a place, right? So you have a person, for example, you have male names, female names. So in the book, we came across many male and female names: Khalid, Khalil, Khawla, Khadija. Okay. Now it's good to know that these are proper nouns, mainly because, number one, when you say Muhammadun, even though it doesn't have an alif lam, it's ma'rifah. It's definite. So that's why you can say something like Muhammadun Tabib. Because Muhammadun Tabib, you might say, Ustad, how can Muhammadun Tabib be a full complete sentence? Muhammadun as a tanween, it's nakirah, indefinite. Tabibun has tanween, it's indefinite. So here we have two indefinites. Maybe Muhammadun is a noun and Tabibun is an adjective. So the doctorish Muhammad doesn't really make sense, right? Or a doctorish Muhammad or whatever. No. Okay. Or Muhammadun Tawil, a tall Muhammad. La. Muhammadun Tawil does not mean a tall Muhammad. Muhammadun Tawil means Muhammad is tall. This is a complete sentence. It's a mubtada and khabar. Why? Because Muhammad is a proper noun, and proper nouns are always definite. Proper nouns are names of people. What's more definite than somebody's name? Okay? Khalid, Abdurrahman. I mean, if you look at the list of names here in Zoom, okay? So we have Abdul Fattah or Umar or Zainab. These are actual people. Yes, that's not indefinite. These are, if I say Zainab, I mean Zainab. I'm not talking about any Zainab. I'm talking about the Zainab in class, or I'm talking about Abdul Fattah in class, or the Umar in class, or the Ahmed in class, or the Abdul Ghani in class, or whatever. Right? So proper nouns are always definite. Okay, and these could be male names or female names. Okay. Also, names of organizations, products, names of places, like continents, countries, cities. Okay. So the bold ones are the ones we've done so far, right? So we've done male names. We came across female names. I'm not sure if we came across any organizations so far, unit 1 to 4, or products, but we have organizations like companies, they're proper names. Apple, Aramco, whatever. These are proper nouns. Products. You also have names of places. Okay. So we have continent names, country names, such as, what do we come across so far? Masr, Turkey. These are names of countries. Those are proper nouns. And we also have the concept of concrete and abstract, by the way. If you don't know what it means, concrete is something physical you can touch and feel. Abstract is something you can't feel, it's an idea. Okay, such as calendar days. A day is not something that's physical. So some of the calendar days, these are proper nouns. Al-Khamis, Al-Jumu'ah, Al-Sabt, these are proper nouns. Holidays such as Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha. Religions such as Al-Islam. Scriptures such as Al-Quran. All of these are proper nouns of things that are not physical, that we can't touch. Obviously, the Quran is, the Mus'haf is the physical thing that we touch, right? Whereas the Quran that we recite is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. Then we have common nouns, which is the opposite of proper nouns. These are by default indefinite. So these are the sort of nouns that you can't just have at the beginning of a sentence without an alif lam. Okay, and these could be persons, such as occupations. We've done all of these words, by the way. I've kind of like grouped all the words we've done so far under its grammatical category. So the occupations that we've done so far. And as you can see, I'm also kind of categorizing the subcategories. Okay, so we have nouns, which can be common nouns, which we can also have persons. So we learned about occupations. Yes. So we have mudarris, taliba, tabiba, muhandis, muallima, talib. Now you might ask me, why is this important? I know that mudarris is an occupation. Yes, because it helps you with your sentence creation, right? These sort of nouns, they have a certain place within the sentence, right? We have relations, for example. Relations, normally they are mudaf ilayh, mudaf ilayh. Okay, so akhi, ukhti, sadiqi, usratuka, jaddi, jaddatuka. So again, the category that a noun belongs to has a major effect on how you use that word or what kind of function or role it plays within a sentence. These are all relation words that we've done. Mainly the relation is family or being a family member. We have akh, ukht, sadiq, your friend, usra, jad, jadda, walida, walid, amma, ibna, awlad. Okay? And I think going forward, I'm actually going to ask you to recall some of these things. So let's open WooClap actually, instead of me just giving you the whole list. Let's involve you, inshallah, in this. Okay, so right now, remember what we said at the beginning? Something around the lines of you need to start connecting the vocabulary that you learn in Arabic. You need to start connecting it to the attributes it has as opposed to connecting it to the English word. So if I say to you in English, a doctor, you know it's an occupation. But if I say to you, tabib, then that might not come to mind, which is a problem. Because tabib means doctor, it's the same thing. So you need to be able to make that connection. So the way it helps us is that, for example, the sort of exercises that you see in the book, which is going to come in the exam as well, a similar exercise, whereby it gives you categories. It gives you categories, right? And these categories that it gives you, it also gives you a list of words. And then you have to put each word in the correct category. So it might say something like days of the week, might say something like numbers, might say something like family, might say something like traveling, whatever, some kind of theme, some kind of topic. And then you have to put them there. Because the book, this is the good thing about the book, it never teaches you vocabulary in a foreign language. Everything is in Arabic. So the exam is going to test you on vocabulary, but not by giving you the English. It's going to test you on vocabulary, but through Arabic. And this is one of the ways that you can do that, by knowing the categories under which the words they come. So if I say to you, give me a word that denotes an occupation in Arabic, a whole list of words should come to your mind. Tabib, muhandis, mudarris, muallim, taliba, all this will come to your mind. If I say to you, give me a word in the Arabic language that denotes a relationship that someone has with you, right? Akh, ukht, sadiq, walid, all this should come to mind. Okay. Sometimes the book gives you exercises like pick the odd word out. Odd word. So it might give you, for example, akh, walid, and tabib. Tabib is the odd one out. Why? Because these three are all family members. and so on and so forth. So this is important. So the common nouns could relate to a person, okay? They could relate to an object, again. So we have household items. Yalla, give me some household items. Let's go to WooClap. Did I share the link yet? I don't think I have I? Share the link. Please join WooClap. So give me the house. So give me a household item. Yalla, in Arabic, huh? So automatically, household items, a whole list of words should come to your mind. And we do this in the speaking exercises anyway, in the workshops. What do? We categorize the vocabulary. Okay. Give me some household items. Arika, okay, ahsant, which is furniture. Forn, okay. سجادة, ستارة, طاولة. ممتاز. كرسي. أحسنت. This now means you are thinking in the language. You're thinking in Arabic now. Okay? You're thinking of household items. You know what household items are. You're looking around, you're seeing objects, and you're naming them. Okay? So this is how we want you to be, inshallah. Those are some household items. We also have, for example, clothing. Household items, this is a whole list, by the way. Athath, we've done a lot of household items so far, mainly because of the unit called a second. Okay. How about clothing? What words have we done on clothing? Okay. ملابس, معطف, قميص. نعم. أحسنت. Those are some of the clothing items that we've done. So I've got here ملابس, نظارة, معطف. أحسنتم. Okay. How about transport? Give me some words on transport. ثوب. نعم. أحسنت. Okay. حافلة. Okay, mashallah. Look at that. 4 of you wrote حافلة, mashallah. Okay, what else? سيارة or سيارات. ممتاز. نعم, with the شدة. أحسنت. Okay, so those some of the transport words that we've done. سيارة and حافلة. That's the only two. And we have some other things as well, such as كتاب, صحيفة, شجرة, سورة. These are all, يعني شجر, we can put it on the plants, but they're not at the critical mass yet. That's why I said it's difficult to test you on it, because our vocabulary is still a bit limited, right? But as you continue, these things will pile up and make up a whole category. Okay, so household items, we've got, mashallah, a lot of things. Okay, so these are objects. Okay, then in terms of common nouns, we also have places. So mention a few places at home, please. Okay, mention a few places. When I say place, I mean it could be rooms, whatever. يعني places inside the home. مطبخ, okay. غرفة النوم, نعم, صحيح. حمام, okay. غرفة الجلوس. أحسنت. نعم. مطبخ, we write it like this, not like that. Okay. طيب. So yes, so these are some of the places inside the home. I actually got a much longer list. Inside or related to home. So we have bait to start with, شقة, دور, غرف, مطبخ, غرفة نوم, غرفة جلوس, غرفة حمام, and so on and so forth. Okay. How about places outside the home? How about places outside? Okay, we have masjid, madrasa. Okay. Matar. Okay. What else? That are those we've done so far. Jamia, we've done Jamia as well. Ahsant. Okay, so outside the home we have madrasa, al-matar, al-jami'ah, hay as well, masjid, musalla. Musalla could be inside the house or outside the house. Anyway, look, to show you the significance of knowing some words that relate to outside the home or inside the home is that, for example, these words that are related to places, they are preceded by fi or ila. So if you want to say that someone is in a place, so for example, all of these words, all of them, yes, I could put fi in front of them. Okay, I can say, for example, الكتاب في البيت في الشقة في الدور في غرف في الغرف في المطبخ في. I can put fi in front of all of them. Okay, or I can say, for example, went to ذهب محمد إلى البيت إلى الشقة إلى الدور الخامس إلى الغرف إلى المطبخ. واضح? So the point I'm trying to make is that these words being part of a certain category, yes, automatically it tells you how you should think of that word, how you should treat it, and it helps you a lot when it comes to creating sentences. Okay, automatically, because there are things that are associated with it. Okay, which is that these words are more likely to be preceded by fi or ila. Why? Because it's a place, it's a container, it's a place that you either go to or you're in. Or min, you can also say min, to go away from. خرج من البيت, من الشقة, من الدور. Now, let's try and apply that to the words under this category person. Can we say, for example, محمد في المدرس? Can we say الكتاب في المدرس? Huh? Can we say القلم في الطبيبة? No, we can't. Here we can't use fi for the most part. Okay? So, or min, we can't say min, right? Why? Because this word, its meaning doesn't go with that kind of structure. Okay? So we do this, barakallahu feekum, subconsciously when you speak any language. But I'm just trying to make it a little bit more obvious. Yes? That when you learn a word as part of a vocabulary, don't just associate that word with its English translation. That's it. La. Think about its meaning. I am going to give you, by the end of this class, multiple different categories. Yes? Multiple boxes that each word can tick. Think to yourself always, which boxes does this word tick? Which category, which box can I put it in? Why? Because that's how our brain works. When you put the word in a suitable box, then when you go out looking for it, it's easier to find. And I gave you this example many times, that when you want to learn a language, it's good to have a structure. A structure. Why? Because that structure, it helps you with organizing your knowledge. And when your knowledge is organized, it's much easier to retrieve it. It's much easier to get to it. I heard one of the scholars give an example, specifically when it comes to grammar. Yes. He was saying that if you're going to learn grammar, then start small, learn the overall structure, and make sure you understand that before you go deeper. Why? Because he says, if you don't have that structure, you're like someone who's got a big bag, yes, and then all the knowledge that he gets and all the information, he just throws it inside the bag. Okay. I agree, it's easier to do that. It's much easier to do that. Okay. It doesn't involve that deep thinking and active learning, and it's just very passive. Just, oh, Ustad said it. Okay, let me just write it down, make a note of it. That's it. So you're like someone who's just throwing something into a bag, which initially it's easier, but it's so much more difficult later on to find and retrieve that which you put in the bag because everything is mixed up. Okay. Now compare that to someone who has made for himself a small filing system. It's not too detailed. Yes. Okay. Obviously, the more detailed it is, the more organized it is, easier to find. But not at this stage. At this stage, you can't do that. But you have, let's say, a simple filing system. Yes. Such that, you put things together that are related to each other. Okay. And I'm not talking about the physical one. I'm talking about the filing system up here. Yes. When you're aware of these sort of things, these kind of categories. So that when you learn a word, you ask yourself, is it a noun or a verb? Now that's part of the filing system. Yes. Is it a common noun or a proper noun? Because proper nouns, to be honest, you don't need to bother yourself with. Proper nouns, they don't really change. They're just the same. Proper nouns, just people's names. They're very, very easy, right? Whereas common nouns have got so much grammar related to it. They're so much more difficult, right? Proper nouns, you normally don't make them into plural. Yes. Normally the gender is embedded in it. You don't need to think Muhammad if it's masculine or feminine and the likes. Whereas common nouns are a bit more difficult. So, okay, say proper noun. Okay, I'm not going to bother much about it. Common noun, let me think. It's a common noun. What kind of common noun is it? Is it related to a person or an object or a place? Okay, if it's a place or if it's a time, you deal with it differently, right? It's a place you can go to, okay, and the likes. So when you do that and you put everything in its appropriate box, then when it comes to retrieval time, now I'm looking for that word. Guess what? It's so much easier to find it. In other words, it's so much easier to remember it, to retrieve it, to recall it than if you don't do this. Okay, so that's basically the point of this exercise. So these are places inside the home and outside the home. Then we have time. When it comes to times, we have times of the day. What can you think of? You've done some things related to times of the day. What can you think of? We have as-sabah. Yes. We haven't done many, but we have as-sabah and al-fajr. Those are the two we've done so far. And there's al-masa, there's al-layl, there's so much more. But that's what we've done so far. Okay. Hours are simple, just all the different numbers. Put a sa'a in front of them. Then we have days as well, days of the week. No, when it comes to days, not days of the week. Days of the week are proper nouns. Here we're talking about common nouns, such as يوم العمى, يوم العمل, يوم العطلة. These are common nouns. All right. And then we also have abstract things. Abstract things are those things that you really can't touch or feel. They're just ideas. Okay. Such as adhan or raqam or jinsiyya. Okay. These sort of things, right? So concrete nouns include the names for people, places, living things, and tangible things, whereas abstract nouns, on the other hand, include the names for emotions, ideas, beliefs, concepts, and things you can't really touch. Now, why is that important? It's important because now when you think of a noun as being abstract or concrete, it's much easier to remember. Okay? And that's why one of the biggest problems with abstract nouns is it's really hard to make a mental image of them. These things, they're easy to learn. All right? I can give you an image. The book probably has an image, and the images for these things normally make sense, especially objects, household items. You can tell straight away what it is. But when it comes to abstract ideas, it's a bit more difficult. How do you draw adhan? How do you draw, jinsiyya and the likes? It's a bit difficult. It needs a bit of creativity. So for these sort of things, you can't really rely on pictures as much. Type. So these are proper nouns and common nouns. Then we have adjectives. Adjectives are really important because adjectives, they have a specific place in the sentence. You have to know the difference between common nouns and adjectives, or proper nouns and adjectives. Because normally you're going to have the proper noun or the common noun followed by the adjective. Okay? So adjectives are basically when you have a common noun, any of these things that we mentioned so far. any of these persons, these occupations, tabib, tabiba, any of these objects, any of these places, any of these times, you can describe them. These words you use to describe them, that's what we call adjectives. We haven't done much of them so far. All right? Let's see. What adjectives have we done so far that you can remember? We haven't done much of them so far, but inshallah, we'll do more of them later, soon. Okay? So what adjectives can you think of? But they're really important. SubhanAllah, I can't stress how important it is to differentiate between adjectives and common nouns. Really important. Okay? So first think of the common noun, think of the proper noun, then you can think of, okay, how can I describe it? What adjectives can I use? Jamila, yes. So far, we've only done two, actually, I think. We've done Kabir and Jamila, that's it. Nah, that's all we've done. Kabir, you can say Kabira, you can say Jamila. Thul, I don't know what that is, but we haven't done that really. Whatever it is, we haven't done it. We only done those two so far, officially, as part of the vocabulary in the book. Kabir and Jamila. Al-Masjid al-Kabir and Shaqqatun Jamila. Then we have adverbs. What's the difference between adjectives and adverbs? The difference is that adjectives describe nouns. Adverbs describe verbs. Well, that's basically the difference. So the adverbs, I could have asked you, but I'm sure, I don't think any of you would get it. The adverbs we've done so far is things like mubakkiran and mutaakhiran. Okay? Now, these are a description of the verb, not the noun. So if I say, for example, Muhammadun, جاء محمد متأخرا. جاء محمد متأخرا. That's an adjective of the verb of his coming to the school. It's not an adjective of what? Of Muhammad himself. All right? Depending on how it's used. If it's used as part of a jumla ismiya, maybe there's leeway there. Or adverbs, things like mubakkiran, mutaakhiran, maybe when the verb took place, laylan, naharan, maybe where it took place. Yes? Tahta, fawqa. We haven't done those yet. But all of these are adverbs. Okay? And then we have what we call the verbal noun. Extremely important. This is really, 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 really important. Albeit a little bit technical. Right? A verbal noun, we'll talk about it in more detail once we get there. That's why we haven't really done it. The book has kind of like just done one word. There's a verbal noun that just kind of like slipped through, I suppose. Okay? But I don't think they intentionally wanted to introduce it. A verbal noun basically is a verb in the form of a noun. That's why it's called verbal noun. So the meaning is action, something that happened, an action, something that is done. But it's a noun. Why is it a noun and not a verb? Because it doesn't denote any time. So we all remember that a verb is what? A verb denotes an action. It conveys the meaning of an action that took place, or is taking place, or will take place in the future. So it denotes action and tense. That's a verb. But if you take away the tense from a verb, you end up with a verbal noun, which it still tells you the action, but it's not connected to a tense. And because is not connected to a tense anymore, now it's a noun. In other words, whatever verb you can think of, if you want to put it in noun format, it would be a verbal noun. For example, Ustad is teaching Arabic. That's the action, that's the verb I'm doing right now. I am teaching you Arabic. Okay? طيب. Now this act of teaching, what if I want to say something about it? And I'm not connecting it to time. I'm talking about the act of teaching as a whole. Let's say I love this verb or this act. What would I say? I would say I love teaching. So teaching is the verbal noun. It's just the noun format of the verb, the act of teaching. I love teaching. In Arabic, it would be called tadris. So you would have darrasa, he is teaching. Yudarrisu, or darrasa, he taught. Yudarrisu, he is teaching. Yes. Tadrisan. At-tadris. So I would say in Arabic, for example, uhibbu, I love at-tadris. I love teaching. Uhibbu at-tadris. Now, can somebody ask the question when? When it comes to that sentence, they can't. Because there's no tense involved. If I say to أحب التدريس and you say to me when, say to what are you talking about? I'm not talking about a specific act of teaching when I taught. I'm talking about teaching as a whole, something that I love. It's not connected to yesterday or today or tomorrow. I just love teaching. Yes, أحب التدريس. Okay, so this is what we call verbal noun. Anybody caught the verbal noun we that slipped through in units 1 to 4? I doubt any of you have, but for the sake of it, let's ask. I didn't really pay attention to it. It might even be more than one that I've slipped through, but I can think of one. I can think of one. Okay, so the verbal noun I came across so far is مشاهدة. مشاهدة التلفاز. Watching TV. مشاهدة التلفاز, watching TV. Okay, شاهد, he's watching, يشاهد, or he watched, يشاهد, he's watching, مشاهدة. So watching TV, we would say مشاهدة التلفاز. Okay, and the good thing about verbal nouns is now we can do مضاف مضاف إليه. We can even be more specific. I said to you تدريس, صح? أحب التدريس, I like teaching, صح? What if it is that I don't like teaching anything, but I like teaching Arabic in particular? Then I would say أحب تدريس اللغة العربية. That's now مضاف مضاف إليه. And that's like we said, now I've defined or categorized or made the teaching that I love more specific, as opposed to teaching generally speaking. I like teaching a specific subject, which is Arabic language. أحب تدريس اللغة العربية. أحمد يحب مشاهدة التلفاز. مشاهدة التلفاز, watching TV. Okay, this is a very important category of nouns that a lot of people overlook. A lot of people overlook. Okay, طيب. Then we have verbs. When it comes to verbs, barakallahu feekum, there's obviously many different ways in which we can categorize verbs when it comes to morphology, which basically is how to conjugate verbs. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about meaning. We're talking about what? Meaning of the verbs. Now, there's two categories that I'm going to share with you of verbs. That whenever you come across a verb, think about its meaning and put it in one of these two buckets. But before I do that, I want to share with you a question that one of the students asked me on Saturday. Okay? And I want you to answer that question. And I told the student that I'm going to cover it. And you'll find the answer to your question in the lesson, which I thought I was going to teach on Monday, but on Saturday, but I'm actually teaching it today. Student said to me, Ustad, I want to make sentences. He was talking about how I stressed about active learning and how important it is and how much he benefited from that, and that he's pushing himself lately. Instead of just passively consuming content, he said, I try to make sentences, okay, by himself. But then he got stuck on this particular sentence, which is, he wants to say, Ata wadda'u. I'm making wudu. Okay? Yes, wudu. Okay? So we talked about, when it comes to verbal sentences, we talked about the concepts of the subject of the verb, the object of the verb, you know, the person who's doing the verb and the object that's being affected by it. So he was making this sentence and he was like, how do I come up with a suitable object for wudu? Right? So he came up, he said, maybe I should say atawadda'u qalbi, just so that it makes sense. Okay, because I can't say that I'm doing wudu on myself. Right? So let's just say I'm doing wudu, let's say tawadda'u qalbi, right? So what do you think about that? Let me give you an example actually. Let's put wudu aside. Yes? Let's say the verb sleeping, to sleep, right? I want you to make me a sentence using the word sleeping or nama or yanamu, okay? Yalla, make me a sentence. Make me a sentence using the word or the verb yanamu. Or actually, why would I even say that? Let's just say yatawaddau, just like the brother mentioned. why would you go to another verb? Let's use يتوضأ as an example. I hope you understand his problem. He's basically saying, Ustad, how do I come up with an object for يتوضأ? Let me see what you guys have to say. Make me a sentence using يتوضأ. Okay. يتوضأ في الحمام. هو يتوضأ في الحمام الآن. Okay, now, so what would you say then to the brothers? Question. Where is the object? That's the question, basically. You know, when you say يتوضأ means he is making wudu, fine, understood. You don't even need to say huwa. It's embedded, it's implicit. يتوضأ always means huwa. Okay, he makes wudu, right? But how about the brothers' issue, which is how do you come up with an object for this verb? What is the object for this verb? Someone said al-hammam. Okay. Who agrees with that? Now, object is not required. Why is object not required? Can you explain, please? Why would an object not be required? What is the reason for saying that? And how can he know when an object is required and when it's not required? That's the question, basically. Or is that something arbitrary? We just look at the sentence. Or there's actually something concrete we could return back to in order to tell if the object is required or not. Complete sentence in of itself. What's a complete sentence in of itself? He, يعني the man is the object. Okay, if the man is the object, then who made wudu? Who's the subject? If we say أتوضأ, yes, and I become the object, then who's making wudu? Someone else making wudu on me, يعني for me or what? How does that make sense? What is مفعول به? Yeah, what is, yeah, the مفعول به is the object basically. فاعل is the subject. The person who did the action is فاعل. مفعول به is the person who got affected or the thing that got affected by the verb. He, the man who made wudu. No. No. The man cannot be the object. All right, so like I said, this brother is getting somewhere close, or sister for that matter. Object is not required. Just elaborate on that if you know. If you don't know, I'll explain. But the man is definitely not the object. Barakallah fiqh. The man is the subject. He's the fa'il. He's the one that making wudu. Okay, so the answer to that question is that we have two types of verbs, barakallah fiqh. We have what we call transitive verbs, and let's write it in Arabic, okay? Because the English is very scary, yes? In Arabic, it's called فعل متعدي. That's a transitive verb. And this is called فعل لازم. Okay? So we have فعل متعدي and فعل لازم. Which in English, they call it transitive or intransitive verb. Type. What does it mean, transitive verb or intransitive verb? It basically means that a fi'l muta'addi is a verb that requires an object. The verb itself, its meaning is something that shows you that, hey, I need an object. Okay? Whereas the intransitive verb, when you contemplate on the meaning, you'll notice that it doesn't need an object. So one example of intransitive verb is the verb tawadda'a. It doesn't need an object. I made wudu. Doesn't need an object. So that sentence is complete. Don't try and find an object now because it's not going to make sense. Okay? Nama, to sleep, for example. It doesn't need an object. I I went to sleep. I am sleeping. That's it. Your sleep doesn't have an object. Okay. Whereas transitive verbs, the most famous example being daraba, it needs an object. If I say daraba Muhammadun, Muhammad hit, there has to be an object. There has to be something or someone who was the recipient of that beating, right? Okay. So that's what we call transitive verbs. So now I want you to give me a list, if you like, of transitive verbs that you can think of. Okay, give me some transitive verbs. Go back to the verbs that you've learned so far and think of a transitive verb, which we said in Arabic means فعل فعل متعدي. Okay, I'll just leave the English up for now. فعل متعدي. فعل متعدي, a verb that requires an object, basically. What verbs can you think of out of the verbs we learned so far? يغسل, yes. Yes. أتوضأ في المسجد is not an object. في المسجد is the place where you made the wudu. بارك الله فيك. It's not the object. في المسجد is not the object. It's the place where you made wudu. Okay. أريد, yes. أريد شقة من فضلك has an object. يذهب doesn't have an object, no. يذهب doesn't have an object. But you can't go to a place. يذهب إلى المسجد. Now, إلى المسجد is not an object. That's a preposition, and it's a prepositional object. So it's not an object. It's not مفعول به. We don't say إلى المسجد is مفعول به. لا. يذهب محمد إلى المسجد. That's it. It does not need a مفعول به. It doesn't need a noun that has a فتحة, like we said. Okay. أريد does يقرأ, yes. يقرأ كتابا. يغسل الأطباق. يريد شقة. Good. Okay. Now give me some examples of intransitive verbs. Basically verbs that don't need an object. يستيقظ, نعم, يستيقظ محمد مبكرا. مبكرا is not an object. It's an adverb, tells you when. يصلي محمد صلاة الفجر. Okay. يشاهد التلفاز. Okay. أحسنت. أحسنت. يشتري بيتا. يكنس الغرفة. No. يكنس is wrong. Sorry, wait a minute. We said intransitive verb. All of these answers are wrong, apart from يستيقظ. You guys confused me, man. يشاهد التلفاز, that's transitive. He has an object. يصلي صلاة الفجر. Even though يصلي could be intransitive as well, actually. You can say يصلي, but normally it has a مفعول به. يكنس الغرفة. No, that's transitive. He has an object. يستيقظ is a good example. ينام is a good example. يتوضأ is a good example. Okay? وهكذا. So we have ينام, يستيقظ, يذهب, يتوضأ, يسكن, يصلي. Okay? These are intransitive verbs. Again, I'm not mentioning all of this just for the sake of, just for the sake of it. Yes? It's actually because, again, it makes a major difference in your understanding of a sentence and your creation of a sentence. So when you now are making a sentence that has an intransitive verb, you're not going to lose sleep over what object to use. يستيقظ محمد. Oh, what's the object? Or نام محمد. Oh no, what's the object? What's the object? No, you're not going to find an object. Opposite's also true. If you have a transitive verb within the sentence, then you should lose sleep over not having an object, because that sentence is incomplete. If you say, for example, يريد محمد, Muhammad wants, and you stop there, your sentence is incomplete. Okay? You have to tell me what he wants. فعل متعدي, it's called. Okay? Then when it comes to function words, we already talked about them last time. No need to go into detail. Interrogative words, personal pronouns, prepositions, demonstrative pronouns, conjunctions. and some prefixes and suffixes. We'll go into more detail later. Expressions are these sort of things that you just remember them as a whole. You don't like break them down into separate words, right? Such as tafaddal. Yes, that's just the way you remember it. If you want me to explain to you what tafaddal is, it's fi'l, amar, whatever, you're going to get confused. Just remember it as tafaddal. Here you go. Hayya bina, let's go. Just remember it like that. Okay, assalamu alaikum, just remember it like that. Ahlan wa sahlan, and many different examples like that. Expressions, when it comes to vocabulary acquisition, don't break them down. Just remember them the way they are, because if you try to break them down, you're just going to confuse yourself. Okay? طيب. That's when it comes to grammatical categories. I'm just going to quickly skim through semantical categories because Ustad is waiting for us in the workshop. When it comes to semantical categories, we said it relates to the meaning of the word, not anything to do with grammar. So we have plurals, for example. That's actually, I put it in red because it's actually a grammatical category, to be honest. Yes. So plurals, definitely, they don't belong here. It should be somewhere here. Yes. So for example, best way to learn grammar or to learn vocabulary is to remember a word by seeing its plural, or seeing a word and think of its plural. So I give you masjid, you think of masajid. I give you, for example, rajul, you think of rijal. Okay, so that is we have actually flashcard sets for that, but just because we haven't done enough plurals yet, inshallah, in the coming units, we're going to have separate flashcard sets on Quizlet where you have the singular on one side and the plural on the other side, inshallah. We have something called antonyms, opposites. One of the best ways to learn vocabulary is by learning their opposites. Okay, so barid, har. Establish that connection. It's going to help you a lot. Okay, kharaja, dakhala. Remember it. Okay, so opposites, which in English is called antonyms. Yes, opposites. Very important. Same thing when it comes to synonyms, words that have the same meaning. Remember them. It's really important. So I say to you, for example, what's a synonym of mudarris? You say muallim. What's a synonym of walida? What's a synonym of ibn? Walad. And so on and so forth. Yes? So I give you a word and you think of its synonym. And actually, we've actually done more synonyms than you think up until this stage. I didn't expect to do so many synonyms. We've actually done a lot of synonyms, a lot of words that have the same meaning, right? And finally, you also have association that one word might have with another word. Okay, that's a bit more detailed, but that's just to do with themes. Like there might be words that belong to the same group or the same whatever. Okay, so word themes, I would say you find them in the Quizlet flashcards. Yes, so يعني we just talked about them now. We talked about them when we talked about grammar. These themes, I actually embedded them within the grammar explanation. Okay, so there's nothing new here. I already talked about this. Okay, type. I was going to do some exercises or some quizzes, but I did promise Ustad that lesson is going to start at 9:30. He'll be texting me any moment if he hasn't already. So we're going to stop there, inshallah. We'll break up for the workshop. Any questions? What do you think of today's class? I know it was a bit, it wasn't traditional, but I hope that these tips and tricks hopefully help you with vocabulary acquisition as a whole. Because vocabulary acquisition is something that you'll be doing for the rest of your journey learning Arabic. Something that is the number one thing that really determines your trajectory in learning this new language, because it's the smallest unit of thing that you can remember. Yes, and then out of that you make sentences and grammar. So I can't stress enough the importance of learning as much vocab as possible. But again, knowing how to learn that vocabulary, that's another word. That's another topic altogether. Yeah, so those notes that I've sent earlier, they are for the grammar that we've done last week. Right now, I'm going to send you the notes for today's lesson as well. And that's it. Then that way you'll have all of the notes. One final point I would like to make, which somebody asked me, I did not even reply to them yet via email, but I will, inshallah. which is regarding the Quizlet, the quizzes and the Quizlet, generally speaking, classrooms. Yes, basically, the student asked me, how can I access quizzes without having to go through the portal? Because the portal sometimes can be problematic. Now, the way you do that is by joining the quizzes or the Quizlet classroom. That way you'll have access to all of the resources within that classroom. I already posted the Quizlet classroom link. I'm also going to post the quizzes classroom link. Just sign up with the same email that you signed up for the course. And that way you can access it directly from the apps. You should be able to access it from the quizzes app or the Quizlet app. Okay? واضح? So that's one final point I wanted to make. Okay? And now I'm sending you the link to the notes for today's class. Okay? And I'm going to post all of this in the group as well. Okay? Okay, that's Ustad calling me. Yalla. Assalamu alaikum. See you all in the workshop, inshallah. Anything that is set to private means don't worry about it. I just decided to keep that out for now. It's not ready. So anything that is kind of like drafty that I'm not ready to share yet,